justified resentments. This is a very difficult principle for many people to get, but one that I believe very strongly in. There's a story many years ago of an elementary school teacher. Her name was Mrs. Thompson. As she stood in front of her class on the very first day of school, she told the students a lie. Like most teachers, she looked at the students and said that she loved them all the same. But that was impossible, because there in the front row, slumped in his seat, was a little boy named Teddy Stoddard. Mrs. Thompson had watched Teddy the year before and noticed that he didn't play well with other children, that his clothes were messy, and that he constantly needed a bath. Teddy can be unpleasant. It got to the point where Mrs. Thompson would actually take delight in marking his papers with a broad red pen, making bold X's, and then finally putting a big F at the top of his papers. The sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." Instead, it keeps shining and lighting up the whole world. As Dr. Wayne Dyer said, there are no justified resentments. Resentments don't make us happier. Love and compassion do. Love and compassion empower us to look beyond what we see. Love and compassion inspire us to light up someone else's world. Just like in the story shared by Dr. Dyer during his speech given in Concord, Massachusetts, love and compassion help a teacher stop being judgmental and change the way she looked at one of her worst students. Once she did that, the students started to change, and both of their lives would never be the same. The Secret to Success and Inner Peace by Wayne Dyer. At the school where Mrs. Thompson taught, she was required to review each child's past records, and she put Teddy's off to last. However, when she reviewed his file, she was in for a surprise. His first grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is a bright child with a ready laugh. He does his work neatly and has good manners. He's a joy to be around." His second grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is an excellent student and well liked by his classmates, but he's troubled because his mother has a terminal illness and life at home must be a struggle." His third grade teacher wrote, "His mother's death has been hard on him. He tries to do his best, but his father doesn't show much interest, and his home life will soon affect him if steps aren't taken." His fourth grade teacher wrote, "Teddy is withdrawn and doesn't show much interest in school. He doesn't have many friends, and sometimes he even sleeps in class." By now, Mrs. Thompson realized the problem, and she was ashamed of herself. She felt even worse when her students brought her Christmas presents wrapped in beautiful ribbon and bright paper, except for Teddy's. His present was clumsily wrapped in heavy brown paper he got from a grocery bag. Mrs. Thompson took pains to open it in the middle of the other presents. Some of the students started to laugh when she found a rhinestone bracelet with some of the stones missing, and a bottle that was 1/4 full of perfume. But she stifled the children's laughter when she explained how pretty the bracelet was, putting it on and then dabbing some of the perfume on her wrist. Teddy Stoddard stayed after school that day, just long enough to say, "Mrs. Thompson, today you smell just like my mom used to." After the children left, she cried for at least an hour. On this very day, she quit teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. And instead, she began to teach children. Mrs. Thompson paid particular attention to Teddy. As she worked with him, his mind seemed to come alive. The more she encouraged him, the faster he responded. And by the end of the year, Teddy had become one of the smartest students in the class. and despite her lie, became one of her teacher's pets. A year later, she found a note under the door from Teddy telling her that she was still the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 6 years went by before she got another note telling her that he had finished high school third in this class and that she was still the best teacher he ever had in his whole life. 4 years later, another note came telling her that although things had been tough, he stayed in school and stuck with it and would soon graduate from college with the highest of honors. He assured Mrs. Thompson that she was still the best and favorite teacher he ever had in his whole life. Then 4 more years passed and yet another letter came. This time, Teddy explained that after he got his bachelor's degree, he decided to go a little further. He explained that she was still the best and favorite teacher he ever had, but now his name was a little longer. The letter was signed Theodore F. Stoddard, M.D. But the story doesn't end there. You see, there was yet another letter that spring. Teddy wrote that he had met this girl and that he was going to be married. He explained that his father had died a couple years ago, and he was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might agree to sit in the place at the wedding that was usually reserved for the mother of the groom. Of course, Mrs. Thompson did. And guess what? She wore that bracelet, the one with the several rhinestones missing, and she made sure she was wearing the perfume that Teddy had remembered his mother wearing on their last Christmas together. After the wedding, they hugged each other, and Dr. Stoddard whispered into Mrs. Thompson's ear, "Thank you so much for making me feel important, and for showing me that I could make a difference." Mrs. Thompson, with tears in her eyes, whispered back, "Teddy, you got it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach until I met you." A beautiful story that symbolizes there are no justified resentments. We should all work at reaching that place where the only thing we have to send is love. Because love is all we ever had to give away.